It wasn't gold. It wasn't diamonds. It wasn't sapphire or ruby. Yet, on that spring morning, it was the most valuable crown in all of Britain. While the world waited for the bride, a different kind of royalty stole the show. One who didn't yet understand the weight of her last name. One who was just 2 years old. This is the story of a flower crown. A tiny piece of nature woven into a halo. And the moment a future queen learned to walk, before she learned to wear the weight of the world. May 20th, 2017. The social calendar of Britain had one date circled in red. Pippa Middleton, sister to the future Queen of England, was getting married. The world's press descended on St. Mark's Church. The guest list read like a chapter from Debrett's Peerage. But there was one name that made the cameras click faster than the rest. Not the bride. Not the groom. It was the little girl in the back seat. Princess Charlotte Elizabeth Diana of Wales. Just 2 years old. Barely walking in the eyes of the world. And yet, she was about to deliver a masterclass in charm. Her mother, the Duchess of Cambridge, was a vision in blush pink. But all eyes drifted downwards. To the tiny figure clutching her mother's fingers, navigating a world of flashing lights and shouting voices with a stoicism that belied her age. The dress was a time machine. Victorian lace. Soft ivory silk. A design that whispered of a bygone era when childhood was a fleeting painting of innocence. And then, there was the bow. A dusty pink bow, sweeping across her back. A subtle tribute to her mother's gown. A silent thread connecting the generations. But it was the accessories that captured the imagination. In her hands, a wicker basket. Reminiscent of a certain fairy tale. Little Red Riding Hood, walking through the woods. Innocent. Pure. Unaware of the wolves lurking behind the lenses of the paparazzi. But the crown. Ah, the crown. Resting on her head was a circlet of baby's breath. Tiny, star-like flowers, so fragile you might break them with a whisper. It was her first tiara. Not the one she will one day inherit. Not the one made of heavy gold and inherited stones. No. This one was made of nature. It was temporary. It was fleeting. It would wilt by the evening. And that was precisely what made it so heartbreakingly beautiful. For a brief moment, she wasn't the heir to the throne's daughter. She wasn't the future's hope. She was just a little girl in a garden, carrying a basket and wearing flowers. But the wedding wasn't just about the eidos. It was about guidance. Watch closely. The footage reveals a mother wholly attuned to her daughter. Kate Middleton, the Princess of Wales, was the anchor. She held Charlotte's hand with a tenderness that softened the stone walls of the church. There is a moment. A fleeting second. You see Charlotte's lip tremble. The overwhelm of 100 strangers staring. And then, Kate kneels. She whispers something. We will never know the words. But we see the result. The little princess squares her tiny shoulders. Lifts her chin. In that instant, the floral crown shifted. It was no longer just a fashion accessory. It became a symbol. Because this was a rehearsal. A gentle, loving rehearsal for a future she cannot yet comprehend. The flowers on her head were the practice run for the weight she will one day bear. The jewels, the power, the scrutiny. While Pippa and James sealed their love, Charlotte sealed our hearts. And in that moment, the world realized something profound. The monarchy wasn't just surviving. It was blooming. We see a lingering shot of the floral crown abandoned on a table, petals falling. Nearly a decade has passed since that May morning. The baby's breath has long since turned to dust. The wicker basket is likely tucked away in a dusty attic. But the image remains frozen. A little girl, holding her mother's hand, wearing a crown of nature. It was a reminder that even royalty is allowed to be human. Even destiny begins with a stumble. We spend our lives chasing tiaras made of gold. We obsess over the heaviness of success, the pressure of legacy. But Charlotte taught us something else that day. The most beautiful crown you will ever wear isn't the one that costs a fortune. It's the one that fits so lightly you forget it's there. The one woven from the simplest things. Love. Innocence. A mother's steady hand. One day, Princess Charlotte will wear the imperial state crown. It will weigh heavy on her brow. But for a few precious hours in May of 2017, she wore something infinitely rarer. She wore the magic of being just a child. And the world fell in love. They say a crown is a burden. But sometimes, it's just a flower that hasn't wilted yet.